back in 2017, I had the amazing opportunity to give the world premiere of a percussion concerto called Ad Infinitum by the Brazilian-American composer Clarice Assad. Now, Clarice is one of those musicians and composers who is completely free of all categorization. In a way, she is her own category. Clarice is equally known as a stunning performer who weaves jazz, classical, pop world and folk, and you name it really, into a sensational sound journey of depth and emotion. And the combination of her voice and piano playing is as unique and natural as I've ever seen. Yet she continues to push her boundaries, often exploring unknown or unfamiliar territories, which in turn allows her audiences to experience fresh perspectives. However, perhaps her greatest performance has just begun because Clarice has become a new mum. Clarice, congratulations to you.
Oh, thank you so much. This is amazing. It was like listening to you saying, like, is this happening? This is amazing. Thank you. You're very, very nice.
But how has mumhood changed you, changed your
Oh,
creativity? What has happened?
well, my daughter is going to be 2 months old tomorrow. So
Oh,
yes, things have changed drastically for the better. Yeah, it was the best thing to come out of this
yeah.
pandemic time we've living in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I remember many years ago working with the great recorder player, Michaela Petri, the Danish recorder player. And when she had her first child, she said, oh gosh, I've got no time to practice anymore, or much less time to practice. And she was one of those that would practice for many, many hours a day. But she said, something amazing seems to be happening with my music. She said, it seems to just bloom much more. And I'm kind of less interested in the technical intricacies. And somehow the pieces of music are telling a story. And it was very interesting her describing this because there was sort of some sort of perspective, I suppose, in the many hours that we spend dealing with the technical aspects of what we do, but actually having her first baby just seemed to put things in a much, I suppose, better perspective.
I think so. Yeah, that's amazing. I haven't really played the piano for so long now. Like I have not, which is scary because I have to go back to it today. I have to practice because I have a concert, like a month. And then I'm like, oh my God, I don't know how to do this. But hopefully the same thing will happen to me as happened to your
Yeah.
friend.
And I mean, have you not been playing the piano because the concerts have, disappeared from the diary during COVID or for another reason?
It was because of that. If it
Yeah.
wasn't for the virus and this whole situation, I would have, of course, kept on playing because I had concerts to perform and then you have to learn new music, you know how it is.
Mm.
But all the concerts were canceled. That was so scary when that started. And then little by little, I started moving away from the piano and more into new things. Like I became obsessed with learning new skills, you
Such
know,
as?
such as like video editing,
Ah,
because now I had to be online doing
yes.
things like,
Uh,
eh, you know what I
No,
mean? Like what are you
ab
doing now? Like the podcast, like learning new skills, especially that have to do with being online because we
mm,
couldn't be in person.
And how do you feel about that? I mean, how do you feel about your, I suppose, creative juices being fed through this virtual means?
It's hard. It's very difficult for people who perform for audiences to
Mm.
be used to that energy in the room. I mean, I know you know that because I know how you perform. I've seen it. It's amazing. Like you create this energy in the room, and then when you're playing for a camera, even if there are people watching on the other end, it's not the same thing, right? So getting used
No.
to that is very difficult.
It is difficult, isn't it, really? And I mean, I don't know about you, but I find that sometimes if you're giving uh, sessions where there's a group of people, I mean, it's so important to see them, sometimes you can turn your video off or whatever, and you just see a name. And it's so crucial to keep that visual aspect of seeing that there's a person, at the end at the end of the line, as it were, so that we are able to build the bridges, more than allowing the computer to be, or a laptop to be a wall or something. But it's very different. And that skill of being in a recording studio and almost making love to a microphone, through your music is quite different, as you say, than giving a live performance. But now we're all having to do that.
That's right. We're all having to do that. And if you don't know how it works, then it can be overwhelming, right? And I think I was at that place where I knew a little bit, but not enough to tackle it. I didn't know how long this was going to last. And I was like intuition was telling me, oh, this is going to be here for a while.
Absolutely. It is interesting. And I think probably, it will change what our music establishments offer as regards to the courses they teach. And I think technology will be an absolutely essential part of a student's journey, so that in a way it's like an extension of their limbs. I think all music students and art students in general will have to really embrace technology.
Oh yes, for sure. It already started before the pandemic, and now it's just going to be clear that it has to happen in the college settings. Oh, what a crazy time.
It is a crazy time, but in a way, we've always got to imagine that there's a yin and yang to everything, and there'll be lots of positives. Yes. I'm sure there'll be many positives that perhaps we're not quite aware of yet, but I think there definitely will be, and some things will work well, some things will be less successful, but equally there will still be unknowns that we've yet to discover. But
this is like a transition phase, I think, into something really amazing.
It is, absolutely it is. But I mean, for you as a composer, has this past year been a creative time for you, or have you felt that actually it's quite nice just to have a little bit of a break?
No, because the composing actually, I got lucky in the sense that, well, you know me a little bit, you know me to have like this energy, a little bit too much on there. Like I want to do so many things. And then I had said yes to many things before this happened. And at the same time, I was supposed to do the longest tour of my life the same year. And that is the thing that got canceled. So I could actually devote my time for writing. And it was the first time I had so much time to write music. So it was amazing. And I cannot complain about anything. And I would never. It's been good for me creatively to have this time,
And I suspect that the whole world of being a composer has maybe been less affected, rather than being a live performer and so on, because, so much of your time is spent underground, as it were. You're beavering away and then only once the piece emerges does the composer emerge, and then comes in contact with the performers, of course. But in a way, an awful lot of time is spent by yourself anyway.
That's true. And it's just been one of the most creative times in my life, I think, having the time, not rushing and trying to do everything. It's like, okay, sit down and breathe and just be in a moment and see what happens. And I know a lot of people had a hard time with that because they felt like they were worrying too much. A lot of my colleagues, they were like, I'm not going to write. Some people even wrote essays about, I'm not writing music during this time. Like, okay. And I didn't say anything. I was just like, I'm going to follow my heart.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I had,
That's true. And I mean, do you think that your composing will change a little bit? I mean, if you're composing something for a larger orchestra, and because of the social distancing and so on that orchestras have to adhere to at this point in time, I mean, are you finding that actually, your direction as regards to the combinations or types of instruments because of the regulations currently in place? Is that having an impact on what you're writing?
Absolutely, yes. Well, first of all, because a lot of music that I had already written in the past, which had never gotten so played before, started receiving a lot of performances this past year because they didn't have winds. I wrote so much for strings, arrangements, and compositions for 10 years straight. Strings, 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 and that's what people were looking for. So it was amazing to get so many of my arrangements and my compositions played at that time. And also I received some commissions for smaller groups of people, like duos, to avoid a lot of air contamination if that was the case, especially for wind and brass. And I would never have thought about writing duets like that before.
Interesting, yeah, yeah. And I mean, you talk about arranging and composing. I mean, they're two very different skills, actually. I mean, a great arranger is incredible. I mean, incredible. And do you find that you lean towards one or the other? Do you think the arranging helps your compositions and vice versa?
Yes, well, it has in the past because when I've arranged titles like An American in Paris, I had to do a reduction of it, which, oh my God, crazy. I did Dance of the Seven Veils too, which is huge reduction, and other huge works that you have to sit with it and learn note by note because at that time, I was actually copying the scores. Can you imagine?
Gosh, yes.
And then you get to know the music and what the composer did at a whole different level. I think that's how you really learn arranging, and then actually you can take that orchestration into your own composition because you're just like understanding, oh, that's how Strauss did it, that's how Gershwin did it, and this works. So let me just learn by these masters. And it's different than just looking at the score.
Yes.
When you sit with it and you copy the notes, you embody it in a very organic way. So I would say it definitely helps, especially orchestration.
Yeah, and I mean, improvisation is so crucial to what you do. You're a great improviser, and you feel that that's an important element in your creativity towards being a composer and an arranger. So you can look at the notes, you can embody those notes, but actually you could create another composition from those great compositions.
Yes, and I think it's an important thing. I mean, as an improviser, you know that because you improvise so well, and I've seen it.
Oh,
So, yeah, well, if you're working with somebody who improvises as well, you can know that there's very little information you have to give them for them to run with an idea. And I really like that when I'm working with people who can improvise, who embrace that type of making music. It's just a different way of thinking about it, right? You have more freedom to bring your own personality, and instead of having to play exactly what's written on the page. Yeah.
And I think also what I find is that you can, in a way, make contact with the piece again and again and again and again, and it's like a different composition each time. So it's as though you're seeing it for the first time. It's every piece of music, whenever, however you play it, is like a world premiere in a way. and it's true because the circumstances are always different. Whether there's an improvisational element in there or whether it's a different audience, a different hall, just a different day, it makes those pieces, a bit of Bach or Beethoven or Tchaikovsky, whatever it is, still world premieres. Someone somewhere is going to be experiencing it for the first time.
That's so true. And then if you have that for the performer, I think it's nice to, that's why also some performers like to write their own cadenzas. In a way, it's a way of bringing novelty into something that is static and cannot change.
Yep. And just to go back a little bit, Clarice, if I may, that, you've come from a very, very musical family and you were born in Brazil. and which of course is just such a fantastic place. And I mean, heavens, it's so. I remember taking part in the carnivals, the samba carnival in Rio back in 1989, and I think that trip changed my life. You know, I was able to experience something that I know I wouldn't be able to experience again. It was just such a life-changing moment, and just seeing how important music is to people's lives there. It almost redefined the word music in a way. You know, it's something that I couldn't really touch because it was so ingrained in society. It was ingrained in the everyday living that people experience there. And it was so incredibly interesting. And I think all of my senses were just opened up in a way that I had never experienced up to that point. And it was extraordinary. And I still remember everything about that trip, exactly what I smelt, what I felt, what I ate, what I wore, what I played, who I met. I mean, everything on that trip I remember as though it was well, as though it's just happening now. I really did. But you know, from your point of view, having such a rich kind of landscape and having that musical environment growing up, I mean, were you aware that this was something quite unique to you, or was it just completely natural to you? Were you aware that you had real talent as a very, very young girl?
Well, look, I think that first of all, that's so nice that you went to Brazil. That's wonderful. At that time, 1989, oh my God, it was a great time to be there.
Yeah.
My father is a classical guitarist and composer, and he has a duo with his brother. It's called the Assad brothers. I grew up listening to them perform because they were obsessed with becoming the best duo of guitarists in the world.
Wow,
Which they did. I mean, they really did.
Extraordinary.
They really wanted, they had like this mission, and they practiced every day when I was a child. I remember hearing music constantly. If it wasn't coming out of a record, it was coming out of my father's guitar.
Oh, yeah.
And then I think for sure that really was an open, of course, I must have like a natural interest, right? Maybe something that not everybody has, but I had interest and I really listened. And I remember playing games with him. So music was never pushed on me. He used to play guitar and go to these really weird places harmonically, and I would follow. So that's when oh wow, she's paying attention. She can follow. Like, and if I go to a completely foreign key, I would immediately realize and go with him. So that's how it started. So there's an attachment, emotional attachment to that too,
Absolutely. And I mean, the fact that, you mentioned that it wasn't so much through recorded music that you were digesting, but the real instrument, the raw hand on that instrument. And there's a different kind of vibration there. It's a different sort of listening. You're seeing the players play. You're almost tasting the music.
Oh, yes. And then the repetition, because they would like so many repetitions of the same passage, like 30 times. I don't know how many times, but I just listening that's how we learn, right? Repetition. It's amazing to me. And then my father had to leave. He had to go pursue his career outside of Brazil, because Brazil, even though it's an amazing country for music, it's not an amazing country for artists. It doesn't give a lot of, even back then, that was like early 80s, they had to go to Europe at the time to pursue a career. And then that was a big break for me, from away from music.
Absolutely. And I mean, in a way, when you mentioned about your father, performing and experimenting with weird and wonderful harmonies, and you picked up on that, and was this part of him improvising, or was this actually notated already, or was he of this free mind to just sort of go off and see what could be experimented with?
totally free because he also learned music from his father, who
Mm.
who was a shoto player. I don't know if you know shoto music, but it's something you learn by ear. It's like passed down by generations. Pretty much, he didn't know really what the chords, the notes were. He never learned how to read music, my grandfather, but
Mm.
he knew how to speak that language
Interesting.
fluently. Yeah, and then my father learned both ways. He could do it by ear. He could do reading and writing. He was more complete in that sense as a musician. Could do it professionally. But then I learned from my father the same kind of listen to this, assimilate it like you would a language. And then later in your life, if you want to, then you can learn how to write it down. So it was all improvised. Yeah.
It's incredible. You remind me a lot of the wonderful Jacob Collier, who is extraordinarily talented, but you know,
Yes.
he's like a sponge, and I see a lot of similarities between the two of you and how you use your voice, the kind of playing and how you perform and so on. And I suppose using those listening skills whereby, you know, it isn't so much about I like this, I don't like that. It's about, ooh, you know, what is this about? The curiosity and oh well, you know, let's just sort of peel another layer, you know, and see
Hmm.
what's there. And I find that really fascinating.
Yeah, it is fascinating. I'm thinking now, of course, my daughter is only 2 months old, per thing, but I'm already thinking, am I going to do that? And is she going to be like that, like absorbing, listening, or is it going to be her thing? And if it was me, like the parent, like seeing these things happen, I would be fascinated. I would be just like pushing it to see how far the child would go. So he did that. I was an experiment.
Yeah, absolutely. My goodness me. Well, to have such a performer like you as her mum will be amazing. And she can feel those vibrations and hear it and from the raw hand as well. But of course, you are an extraordinary singer and pianist. But it took a little while for you to think about the piano playing because of physicalities of playing the piano. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah, it's horrible. It's like I have a problem with it. I have a personal like almost like oh, I wish I had been so good. I don't know what is it. Apt like my body was ready for this, but it was never like that. I was born with a condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and
Hmm.
it's something that affects your joints. And I have a very mild EDS condition, but when I was a child, my joints like they were not strong, so I couldn't play anything because my fingers would literally just like sink into like no strength at all.
Mm,
So that can be a little traumatizing when you have a lot of music in your mind, and I did, and I couldn't get it out. I couldn't
mm,
because the piano was like a little bit of a this massive big thing, that the only thing I could play, and yet I couldn't really play it well. Yeah, very
interesting.
frustrating. Yeah, I had to work really hard to get to the point where I could play the piano without having, to think too much about it. But the voice was always very free.
Mm.
So that's why I have a much healthier relationship with the voice. I feel like this is my instrument. I own it. The piano, I always have a little bit of like, can I really play these passages correctly? So that's why I never went into like classical piano, because you would have to play all the pitches correctly, exactly how it is written on the page. But what if my finger slipped, which is possible? And then jazz
Mm.
was a much more like free. Now, if it slips, it's fine because I can make some other kind of music with that.
And
Yeah.
no, I mean, please go on, please go on.
No, but that's it. It's like a lot more freedom. It was like it's creativity rather than like I made a mistake. And in classical music, it would be like, oh, you made a mistake. That's not note that was supposed to be pressed.
Mm.
Ah, anyway, sorry.
It's interesting because in a way, it's what you've just said there is really, really important as well, because you know something that could be seen as a barrier, as where you could have easily said, well, you know, that's just too hard, that's just too much hard work, or whatever it is, you might have given up. But actually, the thing about music is that there's always another route, there's always another path to explore. And your piano playing is so unique and it's so extraordinary. And when you combine the voice, I mean, I would slightly disagree with you because I feel as though you own the piano as well as the voice. So, there you have it. It's just a wonderful example and I think very inspiring, whereby, we know that there's always another route, provided it comes from yourself, inside of yourself, to try and make this work. That's great. Thank you, Clarice, for chatting about that with the piano playing and the challenges there in playing. I think that will be really interesting for people to digest. I'll just move on for the time being, and with such a rich musical heritage growing up in Brazil, you then decided to go to the US to study composition. What led to that decision?
My father promised that after years of not being close and living together, because he left, I was around 8 years old, and then I didn't see him for much of that time after that. Yeah, because it was so hard to travel, and during that time, money, the plane airfares was very expensive, so we didn't see each other very much. And he made a promise, once you finish high school and everything, you come live with me, and then we can resume our musical connection. It was a beautiful thing, beautiful promise, and I, made him keep his word, and he did. And what happened is, life also happens. He used to live in Europe. I was supposed to go move with him to France or wherever he would be living at the time. But he met his wife, Angela, at around that time when I was finishing everything. She is the connection with Chicago and the US. Yeah, it was like love that made
how
him
lovely.
move. I know, it's
Yeah.
beautiful. And they are still together. It's a beautiful story. She's amazing. And they are great. They gave me this opportunity, both of them, to come to the US and study.
And that was with Michael Doherty, the composer.
Yes, eventually, yeah. It took so many years until I got to him, but
Okay.
yeah, because I went to different colleges before. But you're right, I studied finally composition with him at the University of Michigan, where I got my master's.
Extraordinary
Yeah,
man, who's also written
I
2
know,
percussion concertos, by the way.
I know. And then I love the cover of one of them. It's really fun.
But then, what I've noticed is that the diversity of your work, and certainly the studies that you did back then, I mean, you involved yourself with film scoring, obviously piano playing, improvisation, arranging, you're performing, and so on. And, having so many things to do, I mean, very often you have to specialize in one or the other of those things. But did you have any clear ideas regards to what you wanted to do as a musician? Did you see yourself being a composer or an arranger or a performer? Or was it just, well, you know what, I want to be all of these things?
Yeah, I think that's such an incredible question. Nobody asked me that before. But it's a good question. I never had a plan, ever. I never had a clear goal. I just wanted to make music. That was my end goal. If I can make music, and I remember writing the application for college, trying to answer these very basic questions. What do you want? What is your end goal? I'm like, I want to make music, and I want to be respected in this field, because to me, as a young, woman musician in a sea of men, that was an important thing to me at that young age, 18, to be thinking about these things. I think, yeah, that's interesting to me to look back, and that was the thing that I marked. I want to be respected in the field, not I want to make money or do this thing. No, I wanted that, to have a community of people who can support each other and move this music forward, right?
Absolutely. And it's interesting because in a way, the world of composing is on the whole male dominated. Obviously being a performer, well, that, you get all sorts of people as performers, so it's not either one or the other so much in that aspect. But did you feel that there was a bit of a struggle being a female musician? Was there an aspect of the music industry that was more of a challenge?
Well, to me, maybe because I didn't have clear goals and I was like a sponge, really. I wanted to ultimately make music. The only time that I remember having a situation which was not good, really difficult, was when I made a demo. I was
Ah,
maybe 20 years old, and I don't know who took that demo to this recording guy. And for some reason, the recording guy, don't know who that, I don't remember who it was, but I remember what it was said about my demo. And that really was really hard for me to hear at the time. It was like, he said, oh, go marry a rich man. Something like
oh,
that, along those lines. I'm
ouch, ouch,
like,
ouch. Yeah, yeah.
like, no, music, not so much. I don't know why that was even brought up, but that made me actually, that fueled me, gave me energy to do like, oh, no way, this is not gonna happen. I'm gonna marry whoever I want. I'm gonna make music. I'll be the
Absolutely.
best version of myself I can possibly. So it was actually, in the end, it was like a good thing to hear, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And it's sometimes those moments, that can be quite key in our lives, and you wonder sometimes, well, if that hadn't happened, where might the path have gone? And I'm not saying
Yes.
it would have been completely different at all, but there's those moments when little comments that fuel us
Yeah.
in lots of different ways. But then, of course, I think it was back in 2004, you wrote a violin concerto for Nadia Salerno-Sonnenberg, who's just absolutely stunning. So, was this your first ever concerto?
Yes.
Ooh.
Oh, that was amazing. Oh, I was so nervous, and it was premiered by Marin.
Uh-huh,
Before
Maren also.
Marin Alsop, before Marin was so famous. I mean, she was like well on her way of becoming, very well known. And it was like she had this little like thing. Now it's big to the Cabrillo Festival.
Hmm.
Everything was very like smaller in scale, but still, for me, that was the most incredible, one of the most incredible experiences I've ever had.
Hmm.
Wow.
And
Yeah, but
was
Nadia, she worked with my father and my uncle
interesting.
with the duo, and I met her through family, I would say, right?
Mm.
And I remember I was the driver of one of their tours. And we all got together after a concert, which was amazing. And I was telling them, I'm going to Michigan to get my master's. And she said, oh, I love the university. It's great. Write me a piece. And I
Ah,
was like, were you serious about that?
wow, wow.
And I don't know who she was, but she
Incredible.
was like, sure, sure. If I like it, I'll play it. Very like, no, no, no. If I like it, I'll play it. So I started like interviewing her, like, what do you like to play?
Yes. So did you work closely with her on the piece?
Oh, yes, like everything. And then if I go back and listen, I can remember the words that she said. I like this. I stay away from that. Like I hate pizzicato. It's not so much. Things like that. Like interesting, you know. But it taught me how to work with performers very, very well. It
Mm.
was an interesting thing. She said, it's good that you came to me for advice, because you're writing for me to play. And if I like the piece, if it's something that speaks to me personally, then I can go out there and really play it because I'll feel it. And
Absolutely.
that was an important thing for me to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, you and I worked on your percussion concerto ad infinitum, which certainly for me was a fantastic experience. I was just so I was just so happy when you were able to write this piece, and we did get a chance to collaborate together on it. And of course, it was performed and premiered at the Cabrillo Festival in the US, in California. And in your mind, what were some of the challenges, I suppose, in writing for percussion? Because of course percussion is so prevalent in the music of Brazil and in so much of what you do. But what about the challenges when you bring it to the fore in a soloistic way?
Oh, well, with you, I just, you remember the score. It was like, do whatever you want. I gave you very little information.
Oh, you gave me quite a lot of information.
Yeah, no, I think, because I see some things, I see the way that I've written for percussion without, it being for a particular person before, and everything is more specific. Like, oh, this kind of mallet on this kind of part of the drum. And when I wrote for you, it was like, this is sort of what I want. And I knew that you were going to run with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is like, I wanted your input and your opinion, because I know what you can do with minimal information. I didn't have to be like, oh, play right here in this part of the rim of the drum with the stick. No.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you
And
know what I mean?
I'm glad in a way, because of course I love that openness and that sense of freedom, mainly, well, partly maybe, well, how can I put this? It might be a bit selfish perhaps, but I like the freedom of just tapping into, well, this is what I'm feeling today, and then off you go, and then tomorrow it could be something different. But also, as you say, sometimes it can be, when you're dealing with someone else's instruments or hired equipment and things like that, and if you don't have access to your own, on a particular concert, those instruments speak quite differently. They really do. So what works on the edge of one drum may not necessarily be the best place for another drum, and it could be for all sorts of reasons. So I think that sense of freedom is really important, and it makes the performer absolutely, be on their toes and not try to remember what worked the last time. This is a new day. This is a new opportunity, really. So I do like that sense of openness.
And then there's the other thing too, which is like, we had the chance to do it, but it was a recording of it, and you can listen to it and go back and later decide, oh, this really worked, this not so much, and then, I don't know, make a second version of it or be more specific. But the thing is that you can have two versions of it too. Anyway, it was such a great experience for me.
Absolutely. Well, I hope that we can collaborate on it again, and
I
we can
know,
get
yeah.
this performed. And I do remember, because I had to walk on to the stage whilst the orchestra was doing something, or maybe I can't remember how exactly the piece began now. It's a few years ago, but I remember having two little swirly shakers, and
Yes,
one was higher than the other, and I think I said, "Oh, this is female, and that's male,"
I
and
remember that.
you laughed, and off I went on stage, swirling my little male and female
Oh,
shakers, and
it was so adorable, because I was right literally before you start walking, and then you just said, is this a boy or a girl?
oh, that was it. Yes, that's right, a boy or a girl. Now I remember.
I thought it was adorable. Yeah, it was very sweet. The whole thing was amazing.
Oh, it
People
was
were
so
very
nice.
taken by your performance that evening. It was amazing. It's something that works very well visually.
Yeah,
Also, like, yeah,
absolutely, and
yeah.
that's what you give us all for sure. You then wrote a concerto for yourself for scat singing, piano, and orchestra called Scattered. And did you ever imagine, and do you ever imagine other people playing this particular piece?
Yes, I do. Especially
Mm,
because, yeah, I do. I mean, almost everything is written. So the pitches, the notes are there.
yes.
Not how the syllables, they're not written down. They could be. But I believe that it can be done. And more now because people are experimenting more with the voices than ever before. There's a
Mm.
lot more of that going on, like people um, going away from okay, I have to sing in a musical theater style, or I have to sing in an operatic style. A lot of curiosity around the topic now with the younger people. So in the future, I can see that happening actually.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I suppose I'm coming at it whereby because you're such an extraordinary performer, and it's sometimes difficult to imagine another person, especially if you've written the piece for yourself.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, but having to write for yourself means that you can also edit the part for yourself. When
Mm.
when you like I've done that with the solo part. Oh my God. I wrote something that was too hard for me to play and sing at the same time, so I could change it. So yeah, you're right. You have a point. But I would also, be happy to give anybody the freedom to create whatever they like on top of that. But it's tricky piece, definitely. Also, it has so many Brazilian influenced rhythms, right? I mean, you have to have a lot of things in the cosmos to work in favor of whoever would be doing that in the future.
Absolutely, absolutely right. Yes, and I think that's all part of the situation, really. Not by any means impossible, but it's hard to, I suppose, detach the piece from you in a
Yes.
way. I guess that's maybe what I'm saying there. However,
No,
and
you're right.
I hope you do a lot more of it actually, because it was just an incredible experience to witness that. It really is. But you then developed the idea, or that the scat idea and the use of the voice, and wrote Synthetico, and that's a work for chamber ensemble and vocal electronics. And do you see electronics as an extension to what you do as a performer, to our instruments, our voice, and so on?
I think so. Yes, because after I've studied so many different techniques, and I keep studying many techniques
Mm.
for the voice, but there's a point where you reach your limit. You're like, oh, I don't know if I can either like learn something else that I can't do. Like I want to learn vocal fry,
Ah,
but it's not made for my body. I
yeah.
can't because I'm afraid I'm going to hurt my voice, or I want to sing like opera singer. I can't at this point in my life go and change because once you work these muscles, you can never really go back to what
Mm.
you're doing before. There's so many things that you have to think about. And with
Mm.
electronics, you're like, no, the sky is the limit because the processing is done with what you have already given the machine. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot that happens like in your mouth already when you're using these tools
Mm.
that it wouldn't happen if you didn't know how to use your muscles in your mouth and your throat. But it's an amazing extension, yes.
Yeah. And
Getting
it's
into the
absolutely, and it's what you're saying really is so important, because it's about listening to yourself. I mean, it is, what can this machine do, the human body? What can it produce, naturally produce? And then, of course, you practice something and so on. But it's know what that fine line is between, thinking, well, actually, although I'd love to do that, my arms are simply not long enough, or my hand is just not big enough, or my whatever it is, I don't have that range in my voice, or and it's recognizing that, and then really, really trying to define your stamp mark with what you do have.
yeah, exactly. It's fun too to learn new things, I think, right?
It is. It is. Absolutely. It really, really is, for sure. Just go back to the compositional side again, but what do you think is the difference between, starting a composition from scratch as opposed to being an arranger or an orchestrator? Do you find it's easier looking at a blank page and thinking, right, here's a little idea and off you go, or do you actually prefer to, um, you know, have that score in front of you and then the freedom to do what you would like to do?
That's a great question. I think that, when you start writing something from scratch, there's also this like butterfly in your stomach and voices that may come in and be like critical. It happens. It's part of the process. Like, oh, is this good enough? Is this where I want it to be? And then when you have something in front of you, it's already there. Like that first part has been taken care of, and it's all like just nothing but fun, I would say. It's like the playground. The work is more like getting to create something new that's like, oh, I have to do something incredible, something I haven't done before. That's how I approach it. Like I try not to imitate myself in the future, commissions and works that I have. I try to do something fresh. Especially being from Brazil, a lot of people ask me, can you do something from Brazil? I'm like, oh gosh,
Yes.
I've been writing for so long. What else can I do from Brazil that is not going to be something I already did?
Yeah, interesting. That's very interesting. Yeah. Are you hard on yourself?
Oh my God.
You're a big...
I am. I know, but that's one of the things I have to work on. Like spiritually speaking, that's one of my, I know that's what I have to work on, like acceptance and being more fluid with my judgment of the things that I do. But it's a process.
And maybe being a mum might help that.
Yes. I think so. Yeah.
Who knows? Who knows? But it is
know.
interesting. And then you started an ensemble. You formed an ensemble called Off the Cliff. I love that title, Off the Cliff. So how did this come about?
The title or the group? Well, the title came about before the group existed, because I had Mike Marshall is a mandolinist, friend of mine, and we had a concert to play, but we had no time to practice or to play together, really. And I remember that the concert went really well, even though we only had charts and no encounter and just like, let's just play by ear. But he said, no, it's like, let's just gonna jump off the cliff with Clarice.
Oh, brilliant.
And I said like something that stuck with me, like, wow, it's like really jumping off the cliff. It's trust. It's about that.
It is trust.
And it brought me such great adrenaline, that concert, because I did not know what was gonna happen. And I wanted to recreate that, like when you like something, like I want this again and again in my life. And then I got together with musicians who could do that. In the moment, just if I turned back and like took them somewhere else, they would go with me. Yes, so that's why our group is called Off the Cliff.
It's fantastic. I really love it. And is that an ensemble that you hope to push a bit more once we come through the other end of this pandemic?
I don't know now, because there is Antonia, my little baby, and the boys too in my group, they all have kids now. We all had kids. It was like this time before, and after, right? So I don't know. Also, I don't live in New York anymore. So many things have changed, but the essence of that group, remains. I really would love to take that back once we have.
And I think, in a way, what's so fascinating about you is that actually you can, in a way, be anywhere because you're so flexible in who you can collaborate with, the kind of forces. You're not hostage particularly to one particular place. And I think that's fascinating, sort of viewing your whole journey. I mean, it's been very global, and the music that you embrace is completely global, and what I said at the beginning is it's hard to define you as a musician. You are your own categorization, and I'm very happy about that, and long may it continue. And with that journey, of course, you have received a huge amount of recognition and awards and achievements and so on. Does that have an impact on your creativity? Do you feel that does it allow you to pause for a second and think, oh, well done? Or does it give you the feeling that, oh, well, I've done that, so, all credit and I've reached a certain status, or do you find that it gives you the impetus to work even harder?
Well, I think more and more I'm like, I just want to do what I haven't done before. I mean, that's the thing that I don't want to be doing the same thing. I will go and explore somewhere else that I haven't been, because I I think that there's room for growth always,
Mm.
you know. I like that idea. Yeah, I love that. It's how otherwise there would be nothing to live for, you know, like just constant growth. And I love that I've received so many opportunities, you know, to continue my work and do better and better. And yeah, I just want to share this, especially with young people now. I'm so excited about teaching and
Mm.
all kinds of things. Yeah, always moving forward.
Well, it's fantastic, and it's just been absolutely brilliant to just share this time with you. And I hope you realize how inspiring you are to all composers and all performers, really, because there's just so much of you that you give through your music, through your performances, that are just hugely infectious. And so just a massive thanks for me. And all I have to say is, would you write another percussion concerto, please?
Yes, anytime. Wait, scat singing and percussion concerto. What about that?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Actually, oh no, seriously, that would be extremely interesting. Right, right.
Ooh,
The seed has been planted, so we'll see what we can
yeah.
do.
Well, thank you so
Oh,
much for this. This is so wonderful. You know that when I got the invitation, I got like little small palpitations of happiness, like because
oh,
yeah, because I really love your energy very, very much. I mean, like as a person,
oh.
not just as a performer, which you already know. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And we wish you and your lovely little baby all the very, very best.
Thank you, Evelyn.